Hello, good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. Hopefully, you guys are doing well today. Um, for those that are just joining for the first time, this is just a meeting that I have scheduled um, for those that are going through the projects. If you have any questions on the project, if you are stuck somewhere, or if you just have any question in general as it pertains to um, what you are doing so far in the project, or just your cloud journey in general, you can ask the question. So I would open the floor to anyone that asks to have a question. Yes, go ahead, Kuma.
Yeah, hey, thanks Asis, for this call. So I have a question. So I have hosted my resume using custom domain, Route 53, CloudFront, and S3 bucket and certificates manager, and everything is working fine. But the thing is, in my resume, I have attached the logos of the AWS certifications. So, but when I see after hosting, when I see in website, those logos are not printing. It's just showing something like image in a text format. I don't know how to resolve that. By any chance, do you have any idea?
Is that from my project or some other projects
It's. I think it's a general question. I honestly I didn't gone through complete all the projects in your website. I just gone through only WordPress, but not the remaining stuff. But it's my general question.
Okay, so anytime you create a website, right,
Uh
and
huh.
you set up your domain name, and
Uh huh.
you are doing especially when you set up your SSL certificate and you are doing the rerouting of traffic, yes, every site is different. You would usually have to do an additional configuration in the site's configuration file to pick up your domain name configuration and your SSL configuration, then all the images will load up properly. So every site is different. On WordPress, if you in the WordPress project, you will notice that we add a code after we set up our SSL certificate. There was a code we add into our configurations file,
Okay.
and for the other projects for the other applications we did, those ones too, we have to modify the configuration side. There's a configuration file on the server you have to modify. So it depends on the application, but that's usually what you have to do. It's just one step. You may have to do a research on that particular site and that particular application, and figure out what needs to be added, but it's usually one simple thing you have to add to your configuration file, and all your images will load properly.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
No
I think
problem.
that's all I have for now.
Yeah, thank you. How's everyone doing? Are you One thing I noticed that I want to mention is I if you guys want to, so the projects that I've aligned for you guys in when you go into your account are pretty much the same exact projects that I did to get a job. And well, I didn't do all those projects because when I started, I did the WordPress project, but I was fortunate enough to get a job from just completing the WordPress project. But I would not recommend the same thing for you, that you should only just do one project and start applying. You can start applying anytime you want, that you feel like you are ready, but in order to give yourself the best chance, you want to make sure you understand majority of the skills that are needed to work as the cloud engineer. And those skills are usually centered around um, having a good understanding of one cloud provider, which in this case I chose AWS. Tools like Terraform, you need to have a good understanding of Terraform. Not not understand how to use Terraform to launch an EC2 instance, but understanding Terraform from the perspective of launching any infrastructure on AWS using Terraform. So that includes being able to create your multi-tier VPC with public and private subnets, setting up the route tables properly, setting up your application load balancer, security groups, just anything you need to set up to be able to deploy an infrastructure in the cloud. So you have to have a good understanding of that. Then from Terraform, you need to have a good understanding of containerization. So things like building your Docker image, being able to build your Docker image, pushing your Docker image to your repository, and deploying your application on AWS Fargate. Most companies, most projects that I've been on, that's what they use. So I would recommend to start deploying the application on AWS Fargate, again, using your own custom VPC. And that you can do in the management console. And also, you should also understand how to deploy that whole application using Terraform. Then the other one is management, like your server management, which is that's like the Ansible project. But that one is a hit and miss. Some projects use it a lot, some projects don't, but it is still a good skill to have. So make sure you have a good knowledge of Ansible, understand what an inventory file is, pretty much how to set up Ansible, and how to configure how to use Ansible to configure your servers. And the other one that we talked about in the previous meeting is CI/CD. So all those projects are aligned in your account. So I recommend that you should go through those projects, and they go in the order of: one project is an addition, the next project is built on the previous one. So if you understand the previous one, it will only make the next project much easier for you to understand, and you can just go that way until you finish it. Even if you feel that you've done AWS and you understand it, I still want you to complete the projects, because it will be a confirmation for you that, okay, you know what you are doing. But if you said you've done bootcamp somewhere else, or you've worked with AWS service, and you try to go to through one of those projects and you can't complete it on your own, then it would still be something where you have to visit and understand. So that's one thing I wanted to mention, that your projects, try not to skip through them. Even if you understand it, then it should only take you an hour or two to complete it. At least you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I wanted to say happy birthday. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So my question was, I was doing one of the projects and I got like a 500, like when I was trying to, I guess view the website, I got like a 500 error or something. What would that be? Like, will that indicate like something somewhere is like, it's like, would it be connection? Would it be security? Like, I mean, not security. I don't know. What would it be? Like a 500 error.
Okay, yeah. So typically the 500 error is like, I think it always points to like internal server error, right? And which can mean anything. So the 500 error is one that I actually don't like as much as the other ones, because that one doesn't really give you exactly what is wrong. So it's just saying that something is wrong with your server, and you have to try to figure out what it is. So a good way to narrow down where the issue is coming from is you have to pretty much trace back your step. So at what point in your project are you getting this error? Was it the first time you are deploying the application on the setup server?
So when when you're done with you go back to the EC2 instance and then you copy the address and then try to launch the website or
Yeah.
something. And I got that error. So it wouldn't pull up the website. And it
Okay.
was just like a 500.
Okay. Were you able to successfully run all the commands?
Yeah, I think I did because I was following everything step by step. So maybe I know maybe I missed something somewhere, but I don't know what it is. It was just like a 500 error, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I wasn't sure.
Okay.
That's why I was asking. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in that case, if that's the first time you are deploying your application on your setup server and you are getting 500, most likely you've missed a step when you were running the command. So but the 500 error lets you know that the issue is on your server, right?
Okay.
So you may have missed a step when you were running the command. So that's where that will come from, but it wouldn't tell you exactly where it is. It's something we will have to probably I can troubleshoot with you sometime tomorrow when I get back.
Okay, no worries.
Have time today. Do you still have it up or?
No. I was too scared to get billed, so I just shut down everything.
Okay, so maybe the next time you want to run it,
Yeah.
we'll run it together and
Okay.
then we'll go through it. But yes, it means that you've missed a step somewhere.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Stevenson, go ahead. Come on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stevenson. I'm new to the group. So the project you mentioned, I had this error before last week while I'm doing the project. It was a dynamic web app, but it was because I select the wrong Linux AMI. So instead of select Linux 2023, selects Linux. Let me precise. Instead of select Amazon Linux 2022 AMI, select Amazon Linux 2 AMI.
Yeah.
And I fix it.
Yeah. Thank you, Stevenson. Yeah.
No problem.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll try. Yeah.
Yeah. So the projects are based on Amazon Linux 2. So let's talk about Linux 2023 and Linux 2, right? One thing I want you guys to understand is that when you are when you are launching an EC2 instance, right, you are picking a machine that AWS, the AMI, what the AMI does is it helps you launch an EC2 instance. So think of an EC2 instance as a computer. It helps you launch a computer that has some softwares that are already installed on it, right? So that's what the AMI does. And on the Amazon Linux 2, there are some softwares that AWS has already installed on those on that AMI. So when you use that AMI to launch an EC2 instance, those softwares will already be on it. So that is why our projects, the commands that we are running in our project is based on the Amazon Linux 2. The reason why you guys are running into that issue, if you mistakenly select the 2023 AMI, is because on the 2023 AMI, some of the softwares for example, I think when I see most people's error is you guys run into error on the PHP command. On the Linux 2, that software is not installed on that AMI, so we have to install it ourselves. But on the 2023, that software is already comes with the AMI. So it's something AWS decided to add to the new AMI. So when you guys get to that part and you run that command, that is where you get the error. So, and it will give you something along the line that this is already installed. And I want you guys to always think of your EC2 instance as the same computer you guys are working on now. That is how I actually learned AWS and how I was able to wrap my head around EC2 instance and all that stuff. It is no difference from your Mac computer, your Windows computer, right? Think of it. And in AWS, I always want you guys to think of everything from a concept standpoint. Don't think of it as running commands. Think of it as you are trying to solve a problem, and think of the concept. So if you understand the concept, what you are trying to achieve, it will be easy for you to find the commands. I don't know all the Linux command there is to know, but I know if I need to do something, I know how to get it. So a good example is when you use the AMI to launch an EC2 instance, right? The concept will be what softwares are already configured on this EC2 instance that comes with this AMI. So that is how you would think about it. Because on your computer, if a software is already installed, right, you can't install the software again. You're going to run into the same issue. So think of your EC2 instance as the same thing. The only difference between an EC2 instance and your computer is that you don't have user interface to click on. You can only do things with commands. So that's how I want you guys to think of it. And in everything you guys would do in the cloud is always problem solving, which is why when you guys go through the project, I don't want you guys to not only complete the project, but understand it from a solving problem standpoint. Because if you understand what you are trying to do, I guarantee you'll find the answer. And that's what I use. That's probably one of the main skills I use on a day-to-day. Pretty much just on the simple question, what am I trying to do? Then the next question is, how do I do it? Then if you start typing online, you'll find a bunch of answers.
But as we're doing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, so as we're doing it for the first time, right? I mean, yes, I'm also trying to understand the concept, but because I'm new to this, I'm finding myself following the steps, right? But it might take, again, people are different. It might take me a couple of tries, maybe go through that same project once or twice for me to understand, okay, maybe, this is what I'm doing. And, and it might take longer. I mean, maybe a few more tries to kind of just grasp the concept altogether. But yeah, so for me, I have to do it like at least 2 or 3 times before I'm like, okay, I might be able to do this by myself.
Good. Yeah. So yes, I understand. The first time you do it, it would feel that way, right? It would feel obviously the first time, yes, most likely you'll be following along. But then once you get that breakthrough of being able to do it yourself, then everything becomes easier, which is why in the beginning of this project, I recommend that you should stick with that, the static website 100% until you understand that. So we have that the first 2 projects, which is the one where you deploy the static website on an EC2 instance. Then you deploy the static website in your custom VPC with your route tables and all those things, right? If you understand just that, and I'm sure you guys know that static websites, when you do it at work, most companies will probably just use an S3 bucket to host their static websites. But I specifically chose to use a custom VPC and all these services to deploy the static website to help you guys learn about those services and how you can connect them together. So basically what I'm saying is, yes, I agree with you, Elise. You have to do it a couple of times following along until you understand it. But if you are able to understand that second project where we deployed the static website in the custom VPC, if you guys notice, it is not different from the WordPress site. It is not different from the dynamic website. The only other things that we add in those projects is the RDS database and how to connect to it. But the same way you installed your application on the EC2 instance in the first one is the same way you will do it in the other projects. The same way you configured your application load balancer, security groups, Route 53, set up your SSL certificate in that first project is the same thing you are doing. So I'm just trying to think along the lines of when I learned it, right? I did that first project. And when I went from that project to the WordPress project, I felt like I already knew 60% of the information. The only question is like, okay, how do I add an RDS instance into this project to be able to dynamically, to make my application dynamic? So that is what you would have to do. And I also have a good suggestion is that once you've gone through those projects, one or a couple, as many times as you want, if you want to test your knowledge, whether you understand it, I have other applications you can deploy that is not the same one as the project. So I'll give you that application. I'll send the files to you and you have to deploy it yourself. And if you can go from beginning to end of deploying the application by yourself, I guarantee you are definitely more than 50% into understanding those projects, because when you do the other projects, you are only adding one or two things to it. Then once you understand the deployment, then the next part is just understanding how to automate the deployment with Terraform, you containerizing it or using CI/CD pipeline. So to help you out, when you feel like you are ready to tackle, like, let's say any of those projects on your own, I will send another application to you that you have to deploy on your own. Okay, Shala, you can go ahead.
Hi, Aziz. Hi, everyone.
Hi, good morning.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Good morning.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for, this meetings every Saturday. It means a lot to me. It makes me feel like a member of a family, and we're all in this together. I really appreciate it. I always look forward to it. I just have one or two suggestions. I'm looking at the way. The first thing is in the project you did in the courses.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see anywhere where you use Terraform for multiple environments, because I struggle to understand that. And then you can always reuse this code, and that's the reason why we do the models,
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just suggesting maybe we should, try make a course like that so that we could know how to do this, in terms of workspace and all of that. And and the second thing is most of us are, just new to the industry, and I believe we really don't mind being part of this project where we could contribute in our way to, to make this better. And I believe we can use that as part of our experience and probably make reference to that. So if there's any way you can, utilize us to probably write blogs or something, or maybe notes on how to improve these things. Because when I was doing the Terraform, there were some, like the other lady said, there were some places that I really don't understand. You provided, I think you call reference file, where we copy from one place and, fill up all those things.
Mm-hmm.
In some instances, I was like, why are we doing this? But what I did now is I'll just copy the code, put into chatbot, put into these AI tools, and it kind of explains the code to me. So I just want to suggest some of us can use that, because like when you were building the ALB, there was a place where you use, I think it's one of, in the listeners, there was a place where you use the traffic port. I'm like, why traffic ports? So what I did was to copy that code and paste it into this ChatGPT, and it was able to explain to me further why I have to use that, because it's not just copying and pasting, it's not just building along with you. It's for us to really understand why are we doing this, and that's what makes us better, DevOps guys. So one has to build over and over. And what I also do is, after I do as you're doing, and I'll create a file on my own and I try to do it again. Most times I miss it by one or two, make some errors, I run the Terraform validate my code. And sometimes I don't get it correctly, and I'll go back to what you did, I understand it. So I'm just trying to, suggest, that you have to know why we're doing this. And the easiest tool now is, instead of bothering people like you who are really, really busy, we could take advantage of ChatGPT. It's a great tool that can, in fact, sometimes when I miss it, I can copy the error code and put it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will even suggest the way to correct the code that you missed it. You missed that. It's a wonderful tool. I just want to, this is one of my suggestions, but I want to say it again. Utilize us to improve this. So do a lot. There's a lot I know you're a very busy person, and there's a lot we can do as well. It could be just explaining some of these things you really didn't explain well when you were building a video. We could do it in a way of writing, and whoever wants to read can read. Just utilize us so that we can improve, and we can always make reference to, I did this, I did that. Like an open source project. So that would be all for now.
Sure. Thank you. And I agree with you. And I'm open to that. If there's any way you guys can use, you guys can be of, you can contribute, I'm open to that. I know Miguel is not here. He started writing a blog on the projects. So if that's a good suggestion. So for the Terraform project, if there's a part in it that you want to write about your experience, especially when you said about on the ALB where the traffic port is, and you can write your own blog about how when you were working on the project, how you had a question about the traffic port and how you resolved it. Those are all great ways. I'm open to it. I know my site has a blog site. If you write a blog, if you want me to post it there, I'll post it too. So however way you guys feel you want to contribute, and I am definitely receptive to that. And one thing I also want to say is that's kind of one of the disadvantages about cloud, because when you are learning about the cloud is, if you guys think about it, even if you take boot camps, right? If someone is explaining something to you, you will still have to, it still feels like you're following along. And one thing you cannot avoid is in the cloud is teaching yourself, because when you get to the real field, that is exactly how it is. You have team members that you can ask questions, but for the most part, everything you are doing now is preparing you for when you start working, because you have to be able to teach yourself. So the reason why I also start you guys on deploying the application in the management console is because I want you guys to see and understand how to configure each of those services. And if you guys notice in the beginning, that is kind of like the gift and the cost of the Terraform project, because in the beginning of the Terraform project, I explained how to pretty much create a syntax for any service, any AWS service in the beginning of the Terraform project. If I had to, let's say all the services we configured, if I had to sit there and show you guys how to get the configure everything, it would be like a 40-50 hour project, because there's just so many things we have to do, pick the arguments that we need, the attributes and referencing it. So I feel like having those reference file helps, but having the reference file is not a pass for you to still not do the work. I still want you guys to understand where those reference files are coming from. So that's what Mr. Shola was saying, is that he is actually taking the extra time to understand what is in those reference files. And what I want to connect is, in the beginning of the project, the Terraform project, I said, if you want to launch a VPC, this is how you can launch a VPC if you don't know what you are doing. And this goes for any service you are trying to create in AWS. I still do it till today. If I want to launch a service using Terraform and I don't understand it, first I will launch that service using the management console. Then in the management console, you look at the settings that you picked. Once you see the settings that you pick, go into the Terraform code, and those settings in the management console are equivalent to the arguments in Terraform. So once you find the Terraform line, you just, let's say I launched an EC2 instance in the management console. I'll go and look for the Terraform code, Google it, Terraform syntax launch an EC2 instance. It would always come up. Then you will copy the Terraform sample code into your configuration file. Then from there, you just have to look for the argument. So look in the console, you'll see AM instance type. In Terraform, there will be an argument instance type. Sometimes it might not be called the same exact name, but it will be very close. You'll be able to look at it and tell what is what. And they will leave a little bit documentation under each argument to tell you what they are doing. And that is how you will learn it. Once you start building a couple of services like that, everything else will come automatic. So I do agree with Mr. Shola that there is still additional work that I expect you guys to do when you are working on the project for you to understand it. So essentially, that part of teaching yourself is almost like no matter whatever avenue you are using, whether you are using a bootcamp or you are doing the self-paced route, you can't escape it. You have to teach yourself those parts. And those are the type of questions I expect you guys to ask me about. Why is this code like this? Why are we using it? Those are the type of questions I expect you guys to ask me, because if you're asking those type of questions, then I understand that you are thinking on the right path. Even with the listener, if you go and create an application load balancer in the management console, when you select your listener, you will see that in there it says traffic port. So anything we put in our Terraform code, I guarantee you that you will be able to see it in the management console if you launch that same service in the management console. So that is my suggestion to when you work with the project is just slow down, take your time. In the beginning, I know it feels like a lot of work, but go through that stress of trying to understand it in the beginning, because I guarantee you, once you understand it once, you understand it forever. So it's only in that beginning when you are trying to understand it. So I definitely agree with Mr. Shola that there is additional work you have to do on top of the reference file that I provided to you. If you don't understand the reference file, ask questions, and also launch it in the management console and relate it to what is in the management console. Yeah, but thank you for the suggestion. And if you guys feel like there's any way you want to contribute, please let me know. I'm open to that as well. David, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for your explanation and the points that Mr. Shola made a while ago. I think one of the most confusing aspects of this DevOps bootcamp is has to do with most of the, not necessarily the DevOps processes as we have taught it, like the use of Terraform and the others. I think the most thing has to do with understanding the cloud. And in your introduction to this bootcamp, you specifically make reference to, first of all, somebody having a good grasp of a cloud infrastructure, like maybe AWS or whichever cloud that somebody wants to be a professional on. I think that is a very, very important point. We need to have a good understanding of those resources and how they work and why we use them. Because what he was making reference to was the why question. Why do you use certain services? And why do we have to apply, maybe when we are deploying a dynamic website, why do you need to use an LLB? Why do you need to have security groups and all of that? I think most of those are not necessarily DevOps questions. They have to do with cloud. They are cloud-based questions like AWS or Google. So I think we have to, first of all, I know our main focus is to study, to know about DevOps. But knowing that DevOps, the prerequisite for it is for us to understand cloud first.
Yes.
We need to understand the resources, the services that are out there, and why you have to use them, and how do you put those resources together to deliver product. And I think after understanding that, that is when is putting up the structure, the infrastructure together start to make a lot of sense for putting them together. Then, and the issue of having your code written out, I think it is a simplistic way of trying to get us into the platform. But the best way is for us to go a little bit more to know how to use the Terraform documentation, for example. So what I do is that for me, it was quite kind of too simplistic, and I didn't have an understanding of why do I have to just copy and paste a particular, maybe I want to provision a VPC on using Terraform. So what I do is that I copy the code, first of all, put it in my Visual Studio, then I go over to the documentation and start to look at each of the arguments, and see how they are recommended for use. Some of them are optional. So I look at some of the basic code there, and I see sometimes you have some of them, you exclude some of them. Then I go down a little bit and I find out that some of them are optional. So depending on what you really want to do. But there are some of them that are very important in trying to write a Terraform code to provision some resources. Sure. So I think this has been my own observation. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is that in learning from your platform, we also need to make reference to some of the AWS resources that you provided at the beginning of the course. It will help us better.
I agree. Thank you. And which is why I was saying that that was why I opened up. Also, I always recommended that even if you know it, follow the projects in the order that they are aligned. So which is why I start you guys with the cloud practitioner and solutions architect. Those help you understand what are AWS services, what do they do. Then the management console project helps you understand, okay, you know what those services are and what they do. Now you are putting them together and connecting them with each other. Then once you understand that, the next part is Terraform. And I agree definitely that having the codes, the reference code ready for you guys is somewhat making it very simple. But I also, maybe it's something I need to also emphasize on. It is not a pass to not learn it, because in the cloud in general, you are, as a cloud engineer, you are always referencing documentation. Don't ever feel like there's a time that you need to know something. When they ask you to do something, you just know it. No, you are always referencing documentation. So even in working on these projects, that's how I want you guys to think. Slow down. Even if you use my own reference file to complete the project, I have another project you can do. Try to start that project beginning to the end, using the reference architecture, and see if you can write your own Terraform code, referencing the documentation and all that to build the application. You only have to do it once, in terms of, like, in order for you to get your breakthrough with any project in the cloud, you only have to be able to do that project one from beginning to end, troubleshoot any issues you have. And once you do it that way, you will understand it. So yes, I definitely agree. And I'm also using this as an opportunity to say, if I provide any type of, even the same way, the Linux commands that I provide for you guys to deploy the application, I still always recommend understand the commands. Understand what you are doing. If you run any of those commands, I expect you to verify what you just did. Let's say you run a wget command to download something from wherever we are downloading it from. I don't expect you to run the second command, right, that I have under it. You just downloaded a file from the internet, right? I want you to go to the directory where you downloaded it to check whether that file is there. That is really where you'll start to gauge your understanding. So I'm saying that to say there is also work you guys have to do on your part. And unfortunately, in the cloud, that is how it is. There's only so much someone can explain to you that you have to still do those additional work on your own, But that is one of the reasons why I'm here. If there's something you are trying to understand, what does this command do? Those are the type of questions that I expect you guys to ask, because then it shows me that you're actually going through the step of trying to study and understand it.
I just want to make this point quickly. One other issue that is very important here also is that for those of us who are very new to this field, an aspect that is very confusing is when you look at the resources that we need to, infrastructure that we need to build before we provision any application on them. Sometimes it's confusing. You start asking yourself, how do I know what kind of infrastructure to build? How do I know if I need to provision in different availability zone? How do I know if I need an S3 bucket and all of that? So in my first meeting that I had with Aziz, he explained to me, and I just want to make that as a point also, that most of those infrastructural requirements are not the job of a DevOps engineer. They are made by the solution architect. So it is after they have built those resilient infrastructure, they submit it to you. That is when you start building up the infrastructure. So the job of knowing all the requirements needed for provisioning an application, it's not really the DevOps engineer job. So I just want to make that point so that we don't have too much stuff in our head thinking about.
Yeah, I agree. And yes, so and in the beginning, if you don't know how, like, that was one of the questions I had in the beginning when I used to learn. I remember when I got my first job, it's like, how do you guys know what ports to open and all these things, right? But you would know. Those are the more you start doing it, you will automatically know what ports to open, because one, the application would tell you, no matter what application you are deploying in the cloud, it will, in their documentation, they will say, for this application to run, you need to open this port. So all the knowledge of knowing, understanding, when do I need to use multi-AZ, open the ports on the security group, those comes with experience, and you will definitely know when, as you work more on more projects. And also in the beginning, you don't have to worry about it, because when you start work, they will tell you specifically what you need to do. Your Jira ticket will be, we need you to launch a VPC, and they will tell you the acceptance criteria. So acceptance criteria means by the time you have submitted your work, the VPC, whatever resource they ask you, in this case, I'm using VPC as an example, the VPC must have this, must have that. So it would be very straightforward like that. They might tell you, launch a security group. We want you to create security group in this account for this resource, and these are the ports we want you to open. So your task will be very, very straightforward, and it will tell you what you need to do. Yeah. Abby, please go ahead.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I just joined last week, but one thing I'll say for those that are very new in this field is to, like, if you can get, there's this site, Udemy. I don't know if Aziz will permit that. If you can get Udemy, it's going to help a lot so that you can get familiar with the terms in AWS. For me, this is a very good project for me, because I joined a boot camp, and I'm so familiar with the theoretical aspects, and I got a job. I have a job, but this platform has been helping me to, like, develop my skills. I wish I had this earlier. I won't be this frightened when I just started working, because I was like I'm trying to keep my job and all that stuff. So I would suggest to get familiar with the words. Like now, if as I said, say that I want you to launch this in availability zone A. So if you do your own personal studies, let's say you're using Udemy, I'm just using that for an example. You will be familiar and you get to know the difference between a region and availability zone. And if you also ask you to like open a security group, you will know that, okay, security group is basically like a firewall at the level of, I think instance or something like that. So I'm just trying to say that let's try to like do our own personal study. I realized that for me, looking at the hands-on, I just started last week, right? But I realized that for someone that that doesn't have any experience with AWS in particular, you might find some terms challenging. You might find some things challenging, like, okay, what is Route 53? So you have to go out there and do your own personal study. But trust me, this platform is the best. Like, if I had done this, my first week at job, I was just shaking, like I was kind of scared. But trust me, just 1 week into this, I'm so happy. I'm confident in myself, and I see myself. Last night, I had a dream, right? And I was building this resources in my dream, which is very, very funny, right? But what I'm just trying to say is, let us keep up, do your own personal work, make use of ChatGPT, Udemy, and as well the project. You have to do some things on your own.
Yes, I agree. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It makes me feel like I'm on the right track, and I'm also open to suggestion when you guys provide your feedback. So I definitely appreciate it. All the projects that I've created for you guys are either one, what I did to get a job, and two, what I'm currently doing at work now. What if I tell you that the CI/CD project that I'm going to release this week, so you guys will have access to it, and all the ECS project that you guys have in the program are exactly the same exact way our environment is built at work. It is the same exact way. The services I've used in there is the same services we are using. How I've configured it is the same thing. So that's why I'm saying, like, in the cloud, you just need to, if you guys ask me what is my intended goal for you guys, my intended goal is not to make you guys a guru in terms of you just know how to run all these commands, because cloud is not like that. But if you ask me, how would I feel confident that I've taught you guys something? It would be me making you guys realize how to navigate your way to solving any problem in the cloud. So that would be starting from the point, if they ask you that the requirements for the EC2 instance, and you being able to use all the knowledge of the projects you have done here to say, okay, I need to launch an EC2 instance, I know where to start. I guarantee you guys, the very first place I always start anytime a task is assigned to me is not in the management console. It is always in the documentation. So I want you guys to always keep that in mind. It is not always to, how do I do it right now? No, in the coming weeks, I will start showing you guys my notes. That is actually why I call it AOS Notes, because I was sharing my notes with my coworker. Then it liked the way I was sharing it. Then I started saying, okay, you know what, I'll start sharing it on YouTube. That was actually how I came up with the name. I didn't put too much effort into the name. It was just all the notes that I've taken from referencing documentation. So I'll tell you guys, the very first place to start with any task that you've been assigned to is in the documentation. You gather things from there, then from there, you go to the next step. So I always start every project documentation. Then from documentation, I take my notes. Then from my notes, then I go to start implementing. Then when you start implementing, you will run into issues. You always run into issues. It is not always, oh yeah, when you deploy, 100% is done. Sometimes you may be able to deploy it on first try, but majority of time you run into issues. Then that is where you add more things to your notes and you learn that way. And that is really your work as a cloud engineer. Trust me, it is not as hard as, if you guys haven't done it, that you think it is. The only hard way we think it is hard is you might be introduced to a service or a cloud process that you may have not done before. And that is 100% fine. Your managers, your company, they don't expect you to know it all, but they expect you as a cloud engineer to be able to solve the technical problems that they have. And if you were to take away anything from this program, that is what I want you to take away, that understanding how to solve problems, right? So what Mr. Shola said works better. I use ChatGPT a lot too now, and I definitely do recommend it. If you guys want me to demo how I use it in my day-to-day, we can certainly.
Yes, please.
I think one of these meetings on Saturday, we can, when we meet, before we get to like the questions part, we can, if you guys want to demo something, if I can also demo stuff for you. So I have a list of things I want to demo to you guys, so you guys can just see how I go about navigating my way. So yes, I use ChatGPT a lot. And even with using ChatGPT, you will realize that it still doesn't free you from learning it on your own. You still have to understand certain things and use what you understand to ask ChatGPT the right questions. If you ask it the right question, is 100%, 90-something% of the time, it would give you the right answer. So those are all the things we can do. Mr. Shola, go ahead.
I would prefer to be called Shola, please.
Okay.
Did you hear me?
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
That's the Yoruba.
So what?
That's the Yoruba in.
I understand. We're in America. I just want to say, believe me, I just want to appreciate all the hard work you did to get this going. I passed Terraform certification, but I couldn't even attempt some of these things you did here. So what I'm trying to say is, it's not just about certification. Yeah. If I had, done this project before going for the certification, I wonder what I would have scored. But I just want you to, for those of us that are new, can you just give us an idea of, what goes up, day in, day out in the life of a DevOps engineer in real life? One of this, but before you go, one of the things I wish I knew before going to DevOps is that there's so many tools to learn. In web development, if you're okay with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, I think you're good. But with DevOps, especially if you look into Indeed and look at the job advertised there, you see like 7 or 10 tools you need to learn. So I just want to. Initially, it really it was discouraging for me, because if you look at those job postings, you have to learn about 10 tools. How can you be a master of all these things? So I just want you to, for the benefit of those of us who have not really been, have not had real life experience, can you just tell us how it looks like? How are you giving project? What do they expect you to, to do? And if you're new on the job, are you expected to know, is there someone that will take you through the infrastructure and explain the existing codes to you? Because I thought I was very good at Terraform until I saw a friend of mine who showed me, he works as a DevOps guy. And when I saw thousands of lines of Terraform, I'm like, wow, I have a lot to learn. It was really scary. So can you just, brief us, tell us, let's feel it. Let's know how it looks like. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So typically your day-to-day as a cloud engineer, DevOps engineer, usually starts with, you have a meeting. We call it stand-up meeting. A stand-up meeting is just for you to give an update on the tasks that they've assigned to you that you are working on. Let them know the progress, if you are running into any issues, and how that project is going. It's just pretty much an update of the project. So in my work, that's the first thing we do every morning. So that's usually around like 8:30 or 8:45. Some other projects that have been Sometimes the daily stand-up is like 10, 11. It just depends on your team when they want to have it. So once you go through your daily stand-up, one thing I like about a DevOps engineer is you aren't really in meetings a lot, unless if there's a particular project you are on and there is a scheduled meeting for that project. Then really from my stand-up, after I've done my stand-up, the meetings that I attend during the day is depend on what projects I'm on, or if I need to have a pairing session with someone. So that is how that goes. Yes, when you first start at the job as a cloud engineer, they would walk you through their infrastructure. But I can assure you that walking you through their infrastructure is still not something you will understand by the way they will explain it. Because like what your friend showed you is true. You would see thousands of lines of Terraform code, and they can only maybe when they give you their infrastructure overview, they might spend 2 hours. 2 hours is not enough time for you to understand the entire infrastructure, which is what I always say, you cannot escape that part of, you have to learn it on your own. You have to take whatever information they've given you, whatever notes you've jotted down, and use those notes to maybe at your time off, or they would give you time when you are onboarding. So part of your onboarding task is just to get up to speed. So use that time to understand the infrastructure. One thing I'll say about the thousands of lines of Terraform code is don't try to go into the code and try to understand, try to interpret all the codes, because it is not necessary. But if you understand the infrastructure from a reference architecture standpoint, you can look at the reference architecture, you can say, oh, we are using this connects to that, you are good. With the Terraform code, the good part about it is it is already written. So when they have any updates you have to do, you are just modifying whatever they already have already. So with that is what makes the thousands of lines of code less intimidating, because there is rarely, probably never, a time where you would have to work with all those thousands of lines. If they have a task for you to update, it would be a certain section of that code. Maybe it could be a section where they are using for whatever resource they want you to update. They might say, oh, we want to add additional inbound rules to this security group port. Then you will only be working with that section of that code. So that's how I want you to think about it. So from a standpoint, when you are onboarding, what they will expect you to do is you have to install all the necessary tools you need to do your job. So your job is not going to, your work computer is not going to come with Visual Studio Code. It is not going to come with the terminal if you are using Mac, like items. Most people use items. So it's not going to come with items, Git, installing Git on your computer, setting up. Sometimes some projects will tell you to give them your GitHub account, so they can your GitHub username, so they can connect you to it. And all the projects that I work on, we use SSH to clone the repository. We don't use HTTPS, we use SSH. So that means that you have to create your key and understand the process of adding your public key into the GitHub account, so that way you can clone repository using SSH. So in terms of everything we are working on this project, on all this project, how you guys have been installing things you need to do for the project and setting it up, I would say from my experience, 100% of the projects I've worked on, I've had to set up all those things by myself. They don't set it up for you. And if you ask me what my day-to-day is like now, once I attend the meeting, the task that I'm working on now is, this week in my current sprint, is I have to create a CloudWatch dashboard for some AWS metrics. So it's just using Terraform. So I have to use Terraform to create some dashboard. And the task that I just completed was create an S3 bucket for a team that needs it to, they are working on something and they need an S3 bucket. So I have to provision an S3 bucket for them using Terraform. So that's really what your day-to-day will be like. It will be things like that. It might be an application Another one we are looking to start is Open Search, which is a service that I haven't used before. I actually don't know much about it. So I have to do documentation on it. So your day-to-day would be single task. It will be very straightforward. We need you to launch a VPC. We need you to create an S3 bucket. We need you to launch an EC2 instance. We need you to update something, so that is how your day-to-day would be like. And the sprint, when I say sprint, is when they assign the task to you. Most team works in sprint, meaning that every 2 weeks they want how do I explain it? Maybe Alice can explain it better than I can. It's like when they assign a task to you, basically they are giving you 2 weeks to do it. So from beginning, so in this 2 week section, they want you to provision the S3 buckets, create the VPC, and once the 2 weeks is over, they will assign a new task to you in the next 2 weeks, and it keeps going on like that. Certainly, there will be times where you didn't finish what they assigned to you in these 2 weeks, and you can move it to the next 2 weeks and continue it that way. But they go by a 2 week period. So that's really what a day-to-day is like for like a cloud engineer.
Oh, okay. Can I add to that?
Sure.
Yeah, I would like to, I don't know, the other lady, I think her name is Alice, maybe if we can, see from a different angle, day-to-day, what it looks like. Another question I would like to add to that, I said it the other time, but it's like you didn't address it. I said there's so many tools in DevOps. If I'm given an assignment or a task to do something, let's say like in CloudFormation, something I've never worked on before, do they give me time, or is it just within the sprint, the 2 weeks for me to learn CloudFormation and do the tasks? What is it like? Will I be given enough time to learn CloudFormation? Let's say like I want to rotate the key or whatever they call it. So how long will I be given to learn this and do the task?
Yes, Yes, your company will work in sprint. So if they give you a task, they don't give you time to go and get up to speed with the service. So, but they would, from the moment you start, you would kind of see your day-to-day is always it's very kind of like similar, where you have an idea of the type of tools you guys are using. And if you don't understand any of the tools, it would be your responsibility to get up to speed with those tools. So in your meantime, if you notice that you guys are using Ansible, for example, and it is a tool you don't understand, you would have to, in that meantime, get up to speed with it. But if they finally assign something to you in a tool you don't know, they still always work in a 2-week sprint period. So they won't give you an additional time to say, oh, go and catch up with this tool. Before you start the task, you will just work with your 2-week sprint period. But certainly you have to also be proactive in any tool that your team is working on that you are not familiar with. Try to get up to speed with those tools. So that's how you would do it. For all the DevOps tools, you will have an understanding of what your team is using. And if another thing I forgot to mention is, for your sprint period, right, the 2 weeks, right, they understand how much time it takes to complete something. Some other project also gives you the opportunity to contribute to it. So in that 2 weeks task that they've assigned to you, those tasks are not weighted the same way. And how we go by that is we use points. So if they assign a task to you, they might say, for this task we just assigned to you to provision an S3 bucket or whatever, it is going to be 1 point. And if they assign another task to you, CloudFormation, they might ask you to contribute that. Shola, for this task, how do you feel you'll be able to do? On our team, we actually vote. So you have an opportunity to tell them that for this task, I'm going to need 5 points. So the higher the points, it means the more heavy the task is and the more time it will take you to complete it. So they will ask you and you have an opportunity to contribute. So if you feel it is going to take you more, time, then certainly specify that you need more points on it. So that's how you will go about that. if you need an additional time to work on it. Okay. Stevenson, you can go ahead, then Noah, you can go next.
Yeah, I have a question. Do all the projects on the website or in order? That means in sequence. I mean, you have to do the first one and the second one, because
Yes.
I am doing the deploy and dynamic website AWS with Terraform. There's 2 projects in one, but in the second one with the creation of the ECS, you mentioned go get the ECR image and the repository, but in the previous one you didn't do any hands-on of ECR at all.
Yeah. I apologize for that one, because at one point I had 2 projects in one. Then now I'm going through the process of removing the 2 projects because it was confusing for some people. So I'm removing the 2 projects and putting it as one. Noah had the same question last week because he was also confused, and that's my fault. Yes, the projects are in sequence, but I will go through it this weekend to make sure that where you are having the issue with Stevenson, I would remove that and make sure it is where it needs to be. So there is that project. I will send it to you. It's to deploy the dynamic application using ECS and Docker. That project is the one we do in the management console. That is the one I'm referring to. But yes, the Terraform project you worked on came before that, so I will move it back. But I'll send you the link to that project so you can complete it and so you understand what I meant.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Noah.
Hi, everybody. How you doing? Sorry, took me a second to unmute. Hope everybody's having a great start to their weekend. It's a beautiful day outside, at least where I am. So I hope everybody gets a chance to get outside, clear their head a little bit, because I know spending a lot of time in the computer can make you lose your mind a little bit. But it's also, a lot of fun and very rewarding. I have 2 kind of general questions that I'm dealing with. I have, I think you may know, I have passed my practitioner, but I've not passed my associate yet. I haven't taken the associate. I've been studying. And for me, I'm struggling a bit with the results I'm getting on my practice tests. I'm finding some tests on Udemy feel extremely hard, and other tests like on A Cloud Guru or YouTube feel a little bit more doable. So it's hard for me to, without having taken the test, understand kind of where I'm really at. But I'm scheduled to take this test next Friday. And in doing so, I feel the need to table my work on AOS projects, which totally saddens me because it's thrilling. It's what I enjoy, is actually doing the work and not so much the studying. I know the studying is important. And so part of my question, it's a 2-parter. Part of my question is I wonder how important it is that I really, get this associate before I start applying for jobs. And this kind of goes in the vein of talking about understanding the concepts, because I'm just not the greatest test taker. It takes me more effort than others to do well on standardized tests and things like that. But I'm a pretty practical guy, so I can pick up concepts, well enough, which is why I've felt success and exhilaration from doing the coursework. That was one of my questions. Oh, and the other question was in regards to our resumes. I'm really curious for tips from Aziz, the community, any insights on kind of the best way to showcase our projects. Because I built a resume where I just kind of listed this is my experience, and I talked about the bullet points of the tasks that I would be doing in the projects, like building infrastructure with Terracode or infrastructure as code, But then I realized I think this is not attractive to companies looking at resumes. They're like, well, he lists experience, but he's not listing in like a company that he worked for. So I'm thinking I should go and revise the way in which I'm displaying these individual projects and the skills that I've obtained. I'm curious for insights on that. And again, how important is it that I really get this associate before I start, spending a mid to moderate amount of time in on the job hunt, applying?
Yeah. You can certainly start applying. I know people that have gotten jobs without having the certificate, right? But then in my own personal opinion is the certificate is really just for you to understand. It helps you in the terms of understanding AWS services, how to use them, what they are used for. The certificate is very good for that. And when you end up getting the certificate, it is also good for on your resume, because some companies do have requirements based on, like, let's say if they are bidding on a contract, part of what they use to entice the companies they are bidding the contract from is that we have engineers that are certified in AWS, and our engineers has this certificate. So that is sometimes where companies may require that you have a certificate, even though a lot of them don't require it. But the certificate just looks good on your resume. It doesn't do anything than that, right? It looks good on your resume, but for you personally, it gives you, anytime I pass a cert, it always gives me this, I always feel happy, and it gives me this momentum where I feel like, oh, okay, I understand the service. I can go and learn the next thing to learn. So it does that for you. So certainly get the certs, and it does help when you include it on your resume. But that's what I'm saying with cloud, there's always two parts to it. It is important to help you. It is important on your resume, and it might be important to help you get the job. By get the job, I'm saying that it will be important to help you get noticed. Like if a recruiter say, they will say, oh yeah, Noah has this certificate, which is good. But in terms of being able to pass the interview and get the job and keep the job, is the hands-on skills you have to rely on. So like my manager used to tell me, it will say, certs get you in the door, but your skills is what will help you keep the job. So that's how you have to look at it. Get the cert whenever and however you can get it. But also understand that the other parts to it is also knowing how to do the work physically. And the hands-on skills you have is what is really going to be needed on the job. My job, nobody has ever asked me about my certs, other than when I spoke to the recruiter. Because when you get on the job, they only care that you can do the job. So that's what I would say with the certs. And sometimes when you do go with the Udemy, with the practice question, yes, some people that post questions on Udemy, those questions are just very hard. And if you are just doing those practice questions on Udemy, like that someone posted on Solutions Architect, I personally don't go that route. So a good platform that I found that their questions always helps me out when it comes to me passing. When I was taking the certs, I passed all 4 certifications back to back. And I'm not a test taker too. I hate tests. And this platform I was using to do that was a Cloud Guru. So I found that if I do their Solutions Architect course from beginning to the end, and I take their practice exam, that was good enough to be prepared for the AWS exam. So
okay, thank you. And I'm noticing, like, when I do the Cloud Guru coursework and the test, I feel more confident and like this is doable. And it's definitely when I jump into these other sources where I'm like,
yeah,
this question is wild. Like,
yeah.
I feel like it's like professional level exam. But anyway, your response has been extremely helpful. I really appreciate it. And what I, summarize it to be is like, these are two sides of the same coin, and you can't really have one without the other. And I get that you're saying like, yeah, like I might be able to find a job or get an interview without the certification, but I also know the feeling, when I felt like a super outsider before I got the practitioner. And once I got the practitioner, I was like, okay, like I can do this, So I get it, how it's almost necessary and very worthwhile to pass the associate. So hopefully I'll have good results for you guys next Saturday. I'm going to be drilling down. I probably won't have much opportunity to do a ton of AOS Note labs, but I can't wait to get back into them when I have my associate. And I would love to stay longer, but I've got some obligations I've got to take care of. But thank you all so much. I wish you all the best weekend and the rest of your week, and I look forward to speaking with you all next Saturday. Have a good day, everyone. Thanks, Aziz.
Okay. Yes, no problem. Have a good weekend, Noah. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm reading some of the questions in the chat. So Abby also mentioned that in terms of like what I was mentioning about the day-to-day, that there are also like things for like cloud engineers. Yes, they have backlogs, what they call backlogs, which are like all the tasks things that we need to do that we haven't got to, that we need to look at. So sometimes when they assign you new things, they're always pulling it from the backlogs, which are all the requests. And you can create something in the backlog. If you feel like there's something we need to do, you create a ticket for it in the backlog. And as other engineers have enough room to work on new tasks, those tasks in the backlog will be assigned. So really, when you have to think about things you have to do as a cloud engineer, it is always very straightforward. There's never going to be a time that they would give you like the old reference architecture that we are working on in the project, and they'll say, these 2 weeks, we want you to deploy this reference architecture. The project will have a reference architecture, and the cloud engineers on your team are each individually assigned tasks to work on things on that reference architecture, and at the end, you guys would have built the entire thing. So it wouldn't necessarily be just you working on the reference architecture. So in that project, the task that was assigned to you this sprint might be to create some services that is in the reference architecture. They might want you to configure the ALBs that is in the reference architecture, create the S3 buckets and all those things. So your day-to-day is actually very straightforward, and the things that you have to do are always very clear, I would say. Okay.
Very clear until you have to troubleshoot something.
I know. But then that's why you have people on your team. So that's when your team members will come in. My team member has always been very helpful. My lead, we always have this pairing session where if there's something we need to troubleshoot together, it would make time to troubleshoot it. So with that, you can rely on people on your team, and with that, you can use tools like ChatGPT to help you sort out any issues you are facing. But certainly you have enough time. So I don't want you guys to feel like it is just something that is too difficult that you can't do. You guys, anybody can work in the cloud field as long as you are willing to just do the work, And everything you are doing now is preparing you for that, because I will assume everyone wants remote work. So with remote work, you won't have somebody standing on your back. So you still have to be able to rely on yourself to do what you need to do, whether it's referencing the documentation to learn what you need to learn, understand what you need to understand. So all the stuff you are doing now is preparing you for that. But your day-to-day as a cloud engineer is really not bad at all. Do you guys have any other questions? Okay. So if you guys don't have questions on all these meetings, once we've addressed all the questions, we don't have to use the entire 2, but we can. But if there's questions, we can always definitely use the 2 hours. What I would say is continue to do the projects. If you want to test your knowledge and you want an additional application that is not in the project that you just want to test whether you can do, like I said, for me to be confident that you've taken the value from what we are doing, at the end, I want to give you a simple application that you have to deploy. In the management console, you have to deploy with Terraform. You have to deploy using Docker, Fargate. You have to deploy using CI/CD. If you can deploy that one application using all these different tools, then I understand that you know what you are doing and you are pretty much ready to work. Not that you won't be ready at any point, but you can. It is a good knowledge that you can rely on to apply to any job, and you can say, okay, you know what, I have the knowledge now that I can work as a cloud engineer at any company, because you're not going to know it all. But the main thing is you just want to have a good foundational knowledge of the skills that are required. Then once you have that foundational knowledge, you add additional skills to it as you go. Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay. Well, just like we always say during the team meeting. Guys, yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. But do we have any project that deploys into Fargate?
Yes, we do.
Reached there. Well, so okay, maybe they deploy.
All the
starting way back to ECR and ECS. Is that
we have
project?
Yeah, that one we have like
into Fargate.
Yes, we have 4 of those projects there. So we have the static one, you do it in the console and you do it with Terraform. Then we have the dynamic one to Fargate, which you do it in the management console and you do it with Terraform. So it's 4 there. And the CI/CD one that I'm going to release this week is also into Fargate. So in total, you have 5 projects that deploys into Fargate. I can send you the link to those projects if you want.
No, it should be there. I'll figure it out. I haven't reached there anyway. I just want to be sure we have something to Fargate.
Oh, it's there. Yeah.
Yeah. I have an interview next week. Let me learn from you. How do you handle? I'm always kind of anxious when it comes to interview. Sometimes I speak too fast for them to understand me, and sometimes I mix up a lot of things. Let me learn from you. How do you handle this? How do you impress them? And another thing I don't want to do, I don't want to use the projects you used in your courses. I don't know the number of people that's going to do the same thing to present that. So what I'm working on is to, download my own files to serve on the server so that it looks different, but using the same idea. But the question is, how do you handle this? This does not apply to everyone, but I think I have this issue. How do you ace your interviews?
But your interviews comes with experience, right? So the first couple of interviews you will be nervous. I was nervous certainly my first couple of interviews, but you realize the more interview you do, the more relaxed you get. At the end of the day, you will get a job, right? And the least a company can do is say no. So what you can do is, what I always do is I go into the interview with the knowledge of what I know, right? They are calling you to the interview because they already saw your resume, right? And they are going to interview you based on what's on your resume. They might certainly have a requirement for the project, and they might ask you, do you want do you know about this service? And if you don't know it, tell them you don't know it, because they called you for an interview. So that leads me to believe that they've seen your resume and they like the skill sets they see in there, and that's why they are calling you for the interview. And the other side of that is, if you have included that on your, anything you've included on your resume, is because you can speak on anything that is on your resume. So that should give you the confidence in the interview. For example, a good interviewer might look at your resume and say, "Oh, I see that you've worked with Terraform here. Tell me what you've accomplished with Terraform." Then from there, you just go into whether it's the projects you want to describe. I've deployed a dynamic application in AWS using Terraform, and the reference architecture for that application is VPC with public and private subnets. Then you talk about the services you provisioned in it, and you make them understand that you deployed the application from beginning to end using Terraform, and you wrote the Terraform code. So interview is more of like a conversation. If you look at the video, I do have a video in the program where the interview part of like some sample interviews that I did, and you will see that, no, those were actually real interviews that I did. And you will notice that I'm just explaining the projects, the same projects that you guys are working on now. Those are the projects I'm explaining there. I think being novice you will get better at that with time, but I would say go into the interview and shine more on the things you know. So when do the groundwork to understand what you need to know in terms of like Terraform or whatever the case may be, and try to shine on those in your interview. So don't be nervous about, and if there's anything they ask you in the interview, if you don't know it, say you don't know it. There's no reason for you to feel don't overthink it, and also don't try to impress. I think is just speak on your experience, what you can do, and the main thing you want them to understand is that you are confident. You want to come across as someone that's confident that if anything is assigned to you, you can get the job done, but don't try to have kind of like consult with some people that have done boot camps before, and they've told me that in their boot camps, they tell them to recite certain things, like they have like a thing they recite to each other, to their self every morning, and they go to the interview and recite that. Don't ever do that. Just rely on what you know. The same way you are speaking to me now, you talked about how you paste stuff in ChatGPT. There was this part you didn't understand about this configuration, and you went online, referenced the documentation, and you paste it in ChatGPT, and you ask it to explain it to you. Don't be afraid to share those with them. Those are the things they like to see. They want to see whether you are more of like a problem solver and how you think. It's not so much of, because like I said, they don't assign, unless if it's creating an S3 bucket or something that simple. For most of the services you will probably do, it will require some level of research. So they don't expect you to know it all. When they even ask you questions about certain things, it's about basic AWS questions like, okay, security groups. What is a security group? Like those, they expect you to know. So you are going in there with the confidence of what you already know and being able to show them that in a confident way. So that's why I say don't try to impress. Don't go there memorizing something and trying to recite it back to them. No, just go with the flow of the interview. And interview are always more of like a question based, like they will ask you a question and listen to what questions they are asking you and just responding to them. The same way if I was having a conversation with you and I ask you a question and you have to respond back to me. Respond back in your way of whatever experience you have in that area. And some of those things you explained now, would probably even come up in the interview where they will say, oh, okay, tell me how you usually go about troubleshooting any issues you may face, So I'll say, you'll be fine. You'll be fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank
No
you.
problem. Yeah. Elise, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, give a few points as well. Yeah, everything, as you said, is pretty much spot on. I would also say that whenever you're doing interviews, yes, it definitely will be nerve-wracking, right? Even me that I speak, I've taken so many interviews, and I find that one way to kind of cope with that, it's to take it as a conversation, right? To just think that you're having just a conversation with them. And then also the things that you don't know, obviously you can tell them that you don't know, but also show that you're someone who is, you're quick to learn. Any new environment, you adapt very quickly. Let them know that, although you don't know it, but if it's something that, it requires you to do some research, you can do it. Let them know that you are willing to learn as well. I feel like don't just let them know I may not know this, but I'm willing to learn, right? That then shows them that, okay, this person is willing to learn. So I think you need to give them that as well. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. I feel like a member of a family. Just wish me best of luck.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Good. Best of luck to you. You'll be fine. And trust me, there's a lot of jobs. That's how you have to look at it. And for now, you only need one. So you'll get that one opportunity. Yeah, everyone always does. So keep doing the work and just go in there and trust the work you've done, and you'll be fine.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone have any other questions? So I think moving forward, for each meetings, and I would in the Slack channel, I would have, maybe I can demo some of the things that I'm doing during the week and how, maybe if it's an issue I'm facing and how I resolve it. Instead of always opening it to like a open forum of 1-2 hours of answering questions, I would probably start doing like some demo in the beginning, just to show you guys certain things. Maybe it's like it would just be anything and everything. Then if you guys want to demo stuff too, it will be a good opportunity to do that as well, because on some projects that I work on, we actually demo stuff every 2 weeks. At the end of the sprint, you have to demo something that you worked on during that sprint. So not all projects has it, but some do. It will just be an additional way to make use of our time and help you understand the things I'm doing or things you need to know. Like, for example, one thing I'm thinking about demoing is just how to create a PR, a pull request from your task that is assigned, creating a different branch, making your change on the branch, pushing it and all that stuff. So, and if there's certainly anything you guys want me to do a demo on, I would be willing to do that as well. Okay. Well, if you guys don't have any questions, that would be it for today. Thank you guys. Have a good weekend, and I will see you guys next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right,
have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.